Ooh, nobody's ever asked me that.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Dispatch Revolution podcast. I'm Stacy Walker. I'm excited to say this is episode number 1, and I'm glad you're here. We've got a lot to discuss, disentangle, and unwind, but we're going to take it one step at a time. In today's episode, we're going to discuss 3 timely topics that have been eating at us at Dispatch Revolution with someone who knows what he's talking about. We'll dig into Latino outreach in the wake of the 2024 election, what it means to build a movement centered on working people, and a big problem inside the Democratic Party's consulting class. Today's guest is someone who knows the stakes of this political moment better than most, and more importantly, knows how to move people. And that's because he comes from a different place than most people in politics, and therefore carries a different story. Chuck Rocha will tell you he was born in a trailer house 40 miles from the nearest city on a working farm. He would become a union man, working as a steam fitter in Pittsburgh, then a political strategist and trailblazer in Latino organizing, eventually becoming the architect behind one of the most effective Latino outreach strategies this country has ever seen, T.O. Bernie.
Rural East Texas, farming community, Baptist churches. You can see how this is going down. So I was raised in the woods of East Texas like every other redneck. This is not a made-up accent, and those cowboy hats I have been literally wearing my entire life. I don't wear it when I do these interviews because my head gets hot because I get all worked up. I would go to work in a factory when I was 19 because I'd had this baby and I needed insurance. Does that sound familiar?
Chuck's unprecedented success comes both because of and despite his story.
Nobody in my family had ever been to college. Most folks in my family never graduated high school. Nobody in my family had any connection to any power whatsoever. No college, no degrees, no influence. Nobody. I knew nothing about politics.
He was also a teenage father and was criminally convicted.
Any of one of those 3 things, it's very important for people to know, any one of those 3 things in politics would have kept me out of politics forever. And I'm all 3 of those things.
But Chuck worked hard in the factory and organized for the union. Now, he's been in the rooms where decisions are made. He's been in the streets where power is built, and he's got a lot to say about where the left goes from here and what happens if we don't get serious about building something real.
I've seen power up close. And there's one thing I've learned about power is that there's lots of people in power that's fell backwards into it. It's not as big as it seems. Congress is much smaller than you think it is. Congressmen are dumber than you know, unless you talk to one. They're dumb. A lot of them dumb as a box of rocks. Not all of them. Some of them. Don't over glorify the power to underestimate your own power. I believe you can do it because I did it. And you're way smarter than I'll ever be. And that's what I think people should think about every day.
Dispatch Revolution sits down with Chuck Rocha.
I am really an outlier. I shouldn't be here. And if one of 20 different things don't fall exactly just right, I am not here.
Chuck, thanks so much for joining us here on Dispatch Revolution's podcast. I really, really appreciate it. Just for our listeners who don't know, I'll never forget when I first met Chuck. We were in Iowa. I think we were in Des Moines ahead of the caucus. And I got a chance to catch you. You were flying all over the country, advising Senator Sanders, who, of course, was running for president at that time. And I'll never forget the conversation we had in the restaurant we were in. Wasn't very long, short, 5 minutes maybe. But you listened to me and you made me feel important and worthy and valued. And you had a cowboy hat on, which was pretty badass. And I'm quite surprised you don't have one on right now.
Oh, they're never very far away. Let me be clear.
There we go. There we go. I love it. So I just want to thank you for all of the support and guidance you gave me as a local elected official in Iowa trying to do a good thing. So I appreciate that.
No, and I think that, I was aware of you before I had met you, just, folks talking about, your rise in Iowa and your work with the campaigns. I was talking to a group of students this morning, and I think something I said then still sticks true to back when me and you met. I was like, it cost absolutely nothing not to be an asshole. Right. We're all going to escalate up power structures and get at whatever level of that power we get at. And there'll always be people, quote unquote, below us. And how you treat those people are really an indignation of how you are as a person. And just know that the person you may think you need to step on tomorrow will be somebody you need to ask for a job in 3 months. So don't be an asshole.
There we go. I love it. I love it. All right, my friend, let's get to it. Chuck, you've had a hell of a journey. From union halls to campaign war rooms. It is pretty obvious that most of the power players in American politics have the privilege of being connected to power, wealth, influence as they grow up. You did not, and you're still here, which is really fucking cool, by the way, and I'm really happy for that. How do you think your background, which isn't dripping in privilege or, elite university degrees, how do you think your background serves you in this moment, in this time, and serves you in the work that you're doing now?
I joined the Democratic Party in the early 90s because my factory was made these small radial passenger tires that you could easily import from another country. So we were fighting trade deals that were being passed in Congress to stop manufacturing jobs like mine from being sent overseas. So that was my first entree into politics, as we were asked to call our congressman. I didn't know what a congressman was. We were asked to weigh in on that. So I've lived these real life values of our party. And I think the way that they influence the work I do today is every day, a well-intentioned, mainly white, with a master's degree, who is a great communicator, great writer, they go out and write TV ads or digital ads for Democrats, trying to figure out how to get that working class guy or girl to vote for the Democrats. But they've been so removed from it. Not that it makes them a bad person at all. It doesn't. Right. But they have a different life experience than what I did. And I'm closer to it. Every consultant that I know talks about the sacrifice their mama and daddy made, or maybe their granddaddy who worked in the factory or in the fields back in the day. Well, it wasn't my granddaddy, it was, or my daddy, but it was me. When I show people these calluses on my hands, these are real calluses. Now, I've always had them because I've always worked with my hands. And sure, I may lift a few weights these days to try to stay young, keep up with my wife. But I'm a person who has lived through these traumas of being a single father myself, walking outside of my apartment in Pittsburgh shortly after I got the job because I'd been out organizing for 3 years without making any overtime and hadn't missed a couple of truck payments, and my truck had been repoed. I remember going to a payday lender on a Wednesday to get $40 so I could buy 2 boxes of diapers to get me to payday on Friday. These are real life things that only I know how that felt and how embarrassing it was to walk into the payday lender and have to borrow $40 and have to pay them $100 or $80 on Saturday after I got paid. But when I go out and write a message or write an ad, it looks different. It feels a little different. And I don't have any experience of what the textbooks say I should do because I've never read a textbook. So I just show up in a different way, Stace.
Yeah. And it's beautiful and it's needed. And obviously it served you very well. And if we could have more of that, the consulting class could have more individuals with, more authentic lived experiences. I've written a little bit about this, actually, where, we have a lot of elites in our politics. And as you said, there's nothing wrong with, people who come from elite universities, who have proximity to privilege. If they're down for the cause, they're down for the cause. But you're getting at something that isn't often talked about. And it's that you don't view the struggles of working people as an abstraction, something you had to learn about or discuss at the Kennedy School of Government when you're getting your degree in public policy. You've lived it and you bring that experience to your work as a consultant and a strategist, and it shows. And I'm really happy for that. And I wish we could have more of that. So you mentioned growing up in Texas. What does it mean to be a progressive Democrat in Texas? And is Texas winnable?
What it means in Texas to be a progressive is you think about the messaging that Bernie had, that was so popular with working folks. Bernie was talking about making sure that there were trade deals and federal policies that protected American workers. There's nothing wrong with talking about American workers, workers' integrity, strengths of unions, even in Texas. Some of those workers, though progressives, could work in an oil field, or could work in a refinery, or could work in other things. We have to go back to respecting, a la Sherrod Brown, work and the sanctity of work. So if you as a progressive or a Democrat, you should be rooting all of your messaging in work and what it means, whether you're putting on a pair of work gloves and a shirt with your name on it, or putting on a suit and tie, or putting on a nurse's outfit and some scrubs. You got to go to work. All of us have to work. Whatever it is, somebody's got to work, because you got to make money and you got to be able to take care of your family. We've got to get back to the basis of that. And if we were talking like that in Texas, progressives would win more. And what is a progressive? For me, it's somebody who fights for the little guy. And right now, there's a lot of little guys and little girls who think that Donald Trump is fighting for them just because he is spewing the words that they want to hear, even though he has any kind of alignment with what any of that means, because he knows there's only so many old rich white men in the world, and there's not enough of them elect him. So he's got to go out and get other working class folks to vote for them, normally by demonizing the other, whether it's black folks and DEI, Latinos and immigrants, gay people and trans. He wants to look for what separates us, not what pulls us together. And progressive, what pulls us together is work. What pulls us together is having to work and having to provide for our family. No matter if you're gay or straight, no matter if you're green, purple, or yellow, you got to take care of your family. And your family may just be you, single adult, but you got to take care of you too. Because not all of us have the privilege of having to rely on our families. And so thinking about that is the way that we should be rooting our wording in winning Texas. And the last thing is, can we win Texas? Yes. And the only way to do that is to do just what I said, because there's a lot of working class white, black, and Latinos in Texas that are voting for Republicans because they're at least saying the things that they want to hear. The new Democrats need to get back to talking like the Democrats of old, which is workers, American families, and putting workers and the sanctity of work first.
I want to dig into that a little more here. You mentioned that there is, growing amount of African Americans, Latinos, coming out and supporting Republicans, supporting Donald Trump, namely in this last election cycle. What do you attribute that to? What do you think about when you see that, when you hear it? Did it surprise you? And what do the Democrats need to do to rebuild and re-strengthen those coalitions?
There are no less than 259-ish Democratic political consulting firms. Stay with me here. Of those, less than 10 out of 260 are majority owned by black or Latinos. I don't have the numbers on our AAPI brothers and sisters. So if we make up less than 0.5%, or even 0.1% is actually what that is, then that just goes to say that unless Chuck Rocha or Stacey Walker has every contract, and neither one of us do, then there's not very many people that look like a black man or a Latino man that's on the screen right now are involved in those campaigns giving advice. Now, there could be some staffer, somebody that they've hired, and that's fine. I don't begrudge them. But it's hard to say that our voice is being heard when none of us are in the room when the strategy is happening. Now, somebody who wanted to get with me on a debate would say, Chuck, there were none of you in the room 20 years ago, and black people and Latinos were overwhelmingly voting for Democrats. And that is, in fact, true. But that was a different point in time before the internet and before Latinos especially were coming of age. Old black people and old brown people, no matter the sex, are still voting overwhelmingly Democratic. Your problem is with a younger and middle-aged Latinos and black folks, and mainly the men of those two races. And that's because Democrats in the last few cycles, there's two things happening at the same time. You have Donald Trump, who's actually talking about work, America, bringing jobs back to America. Let's have tariffs because those folks have treated us wrong. I want to bring that manufacturing base back here. And Democrats are talking about, pretty much in the last two election cycles, a woman's right to choose an abortion. And they should have. It was a traumatic, amazingly horrible thing for women that was done to them with their rights taken away from them. And I could support my sisters at the same time saying, I got to feed my family. So you would start losing at the edges. And we haven't lost men or brown or Latino men overall. You just saw movement and way more movement with Latino men than black men. But there was some movement, but dramatic movement with Latino men, because we're on average, Stacey, for folks of you listening at home, Latino men are about 15 years younger on average than black men. Y'all should just know that there's a big difference. If you look at a 25-year-old compared to a 45-year-old, they just act really different in the way they consume information, where they are in their lives, and in, I would say, their maturity. So that's why we're doing worse with these 18 to 25-year-old men overall, no matter the color of their skin, because of maturity, because of the internet, because of things that they lived through with COVID. So it's not just one thing, but it's a number of things that are stacked up like cordwood right on top of each other. We may have to explain to people, Stacey, what cordwood is, but we can get back to that later.
You may have to explain to me what cordwood is. But I love it. I love it. What else surprised you about this last presidential election cycle?
Well, the thing that surprised me after the election is everybody that worked for Biden and Harris, who was a consultant or a senior person, is now already getting hired by everybody else. All of the consultants that worked for Harris and Biden all continue to fail up and have been hired by every other race running into 2026. Democrats. Have we not learned anything? Again, nothing against those consultants. Many of them are my best friends. But why do we continue to do the same thing and hire the same people over and over again and hope to have different results? For God's sakes, let's include some new voices. Let's get some new black young voices in, some new Latino young voices, some new AAPI young voices that are the most growing aspects of our party, the places where we're doing the worst. So that's been shocking to me after this election. Harris and Biden underperformed in every single county in America with Latinos compared to 4 years ago. Yet the folks who put together that strategy have all been hired by every Senate and House and governor's race in the next coming up election. So how do you center that with me? I still work in the last bastion of the good old boy system where you can just fail up, where you don't have to have any accountability, where nobody gets fired. Every day I'm talking to another elected official who's talking about how bad their consultants are, but they can't get rid of them because somebody be mad. Like, we got to get past that if we're actually going to win. You know, it's interesting that when I worked for Bernie, the reason I had interviewed for Hillary, but I didn't get hired by Hillary because I couldn't pass vetting as a consultant. Think about that. Bernie Sanders had the most historic support amongst Latino voters of anybody ever in presidential politics. Me and a great group of people get to take credit for that. But Hillary didn't hire me because I couldn't pass vetting because I have a past criminal record. So that should tell you just one little piece of this, exponential to where we are today, is crazy. And the other thing that shocked me is how well, that's the negative. The other thing that shocked me is how well these Senate candidates in some of these battleground states did on the good news, especially a guy named Ruben Gallego. Now, we had won 4 Senate races in states that Donald Trump won. That's in Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona. But in Arizona, it was really special. Full disclosure, I work for Ruben Gallego. I think he's a great human being. He's one of my best friends. But the campaign that me and him ran with a group of people, again, not just me, a lot of great people, is really, really dramatically better than the rest, because in all of the other states, Stacey, there's about the same amount of registered Democrats and Republicans in all of those other states. But in Arizona, there are 300,000 more registered Republicans, and he outperformed all the others on top of that, which will show you how special he was in that race was.
So let's get into that. You know, you started out by saying we're doing the same thing over and over again, hiring the same people, expecting different results. We don't get them. Definition of insanity, good old boys club. We know we have to break that. So let's say that we do in a future state. We're able to get more voices at the table. What's the playbook, right? I mean, I don't want you to give away state secrets here and how you're successful with candidates like Ruben Gallego, but what should we be doing when we do get into the room?
Let's back up from Ruben. There's a better example before Ruben Gallego, and it's going to shock some people because I've been big critics of them many cycles ago. But the DCCC the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and House Majority PAC, and Senate Majority PAC, but they have hired more Latino and Black consulting firms and operatives to participate in advising on groups of races than I have ever seen in my 35 years of doing this work. And they've done it now over multiple cycles. And the repercussions of that is now they had one of the most successful election cycles than any time in the party's history compared to Kamala Harris. At the same time, you have Kamala Harris shitting the bed everywhere, but you have the DCCC and House Majority PAC flipping seats in California, 2 seats in California, flipping from Republican to Democrat seats in New York. So anything is possible when you do it in that way and you do it with intentionality. And they started doing that a few cycles ago. So they're examples of what is possible. That I'm not talking about the congressional races on the ground. They still pretty much hire the same people from the candidate, but the party committee and the PACs are doing something different. And then to Rubin, the big difference with Rubin, and I've seen it 1,000 times, is when the DC consultants tell the candidate, hey man, you really can't do that. It's too chancy. What if somebody gets hurt? What if somebody spouts off? We can't control the room. We shouldn't do it. And normally the candidate will cower and go, look, the DC consultants, they know what they're doing. I don't want to have a boxing match where we have a boxing viewing party or we can't do a rodeo. No, Rubin was like, screw all of that. No, we're going to do it. And because this is how he got away with it, and this is some inside information for you podcast listeners, is remember Kyrsten Sinema was in the race for a long time, and the party committees and the consultants weren't there. It was just me and Rubin and a group of his local consultants and folks running the campaign. So we've been doing things our own way for a long time. And then when Kyrsten gets out and we have to deal with the DC crowd, we're already rolling. So it was hard to tell him that it wasn't going to work because it was already working, because he was rooting his message in work, his personal narrative, him being a veteran, him being raised by a single mother, him going to every kind of Latino event around the country and work sites and job sites and flea markets and boxing matches and rodeos. You don't see that from regular candidates in Senate races because it's too risky. So that's the big difference.
I found, and I continue to find, figures like Senator Sanders, AOC, and others to be really compelling, not just for their ideology, but for their conviction and their authenticity in the way that it's expressed. You aren't going to find characters like that hedging when it comes to the issues that matter. They're going to tell you what they believe. They're going to live it. Their political identity, I think, is shaped by authenticity, whether you agree with what they're saying or not. I think there is a lot of folks that respect that. The candidates who truly believe in progressivism, truly believe in a better society, they're going to be better off if their campaigns are a more authentic expression of who they are and their politics in their community. And it's only when you have, you know, the big bad DC consulting class that comes in that's connected to the party in really serious ways, that may be connected to the influencers who decide how much money party entities are going to give you. And they try to, you know, put a blanket on a person's authenticity. They try to dull the flame a little bit because it's too risky. You know, I've been a part of a lot of races too. I've seen a lot of candidates who have all the money, who do all the things, who get all the right endorsements, come up short. And one of the common threads I find in cases like that is that they are super connected to the DC consulting class. And it's really hard to know what they actually believe in. I won't share too many details about this insider baseball, but I happen to be in the room for a very high profile candidate. We're talking about the issue of gun violence. That came up. One of the things that was said to me by their top general was, we intentionally don't talk much about that because we don't have a policy position on it. And we want to provide the candidate with the ability to go whichever way, you know, the polls tell us we should go on that. And it's really disheartening. It's really, really disheartening. So can you speak to the value of authenticity when it comes to doing politics in this modern age?
There's a lot of authentic candidates who go unheard, who we never hear from. They just never can break out of the box because they're not the sexy candidate to get the money. There's congressional races every day that have people that are very moving, but nobody ever hears from them because they're the tree that falls in the woods. Bernie Sanders and AOC, not, I would say, because there's some progressive behemoths, but they are. Right. It's because they built Name ID and they raise enormous amounts of money from grassroots donors who help them get their message out. Every day, Bernie or AOC or Greg Casar or Rocha is taking big chunks of money that people give them, and they go out and invest that. This is some underbelly here, y'all, in getting more people emails and social media accounts that look like those people, so they can then get money from those people, so then they can go out and spread their message. The thing that makes AOC and Bernie and Greg and others more pure is they're not asking from corporations or rich people for that money. They're saying, working people give me $10. I'm going to go get more money to give us, somebody else to give us money. And then we're going to go out and spread this message and do these tours and do all the things that people have been very hungry for. So I've been in every one of those meetings you're talking about. And I do think AOC and Bernie and others, but they are the exception, not the rule. And they are special politicians. They're special because they connect with people. The average American could not name or has any inkling who Greg Casar is. But y'all should know on this podcast, he's the chairman of the Progressive Caucus in the U.S. Congress. He's not even 40 years old, Mexican-American brother from Austin, who is a badass. But nobody knows him because it's not because he's inauthentic. He's super authentic. And I think the future of the party. But he's got to be able to get out there enough. And what does that mean, get out there enough? Like more people seeing him. When folks who were inauthentic, think about a Gavin Newsom. I ain't picking on Gavin. I like Gavin. I ain't got no beef with Gavin. But if you were to tell me to draw a politician and to draw up what one looks like and acts like, it's Gavin is like politician in the dictionary when you open up the book. Bernie Sanders would not be that. AOC would not be that either. She's too smart, she's too pretty, and she's too out. She all the things. Like those politicians ain't supposed to look like her or Bernie. Giving a male and female example for purpose, because this is not women can't be elected or old men can't be elected. I'm just saying neither one of them look like Gavin Newsom. That's a great way to put it. Or when you put all of these 2028 hopefuls up there, like a lot of white men, and you think we got to have a white man, and maybe we do. We don't know that yet. But there's one piece I'll end on here, especially for you progressives, is when we talk about the slide of Black men, the slide of Latinos, and especially Latino men, I say that there's something that progressive, quote unquote, consultants and mainstream Democratic consultants have in common. And there's very few people in either one of those rooms that look like me and Stacy. The only thing wider than the Democratic consultants are progressive consultants. And I said it, and I'll say it again, is that you want to talk about the widest consultants in the world, they're the progressive consultants. And most of them have 2 master's degrees, where the regular consultants only have 1. And they really know what's best. And about purity contest and Chuck Rocha and Stacy and this and that. Like, we got to have more regular folks involved in our campaigns if we're really going to start connecting with other regular folks. Not that progressive consultants ain't regular. Love you. Don't be killing me. I'm just saying, I love you. You can still come over to my house and have dinner. I'm just saying, ain't we got some room for some other folks?
I love that. And we're going to have you back because I want to get into that specific topic.
Ooh, I bet I scratched an itch there.
Even more. I love it. What I heard you say is folks like Greg Casar, they need to get out there more. And I'm presuming part of that means get out into the media ecosystem a bit more so that they can be noticed and help build this coalition that we need. So when we think about that, the media landscape in general, with more disinformation and propaganda than we've seen in our lifetime, how is that affecting, not just the Latino community or minorities in the Democratic Party? How is it affecting us? And what do we do about this weird media landscape that we're in?
It's ever evolving, and I feel bad for folks coming up in campaigns now. When I started in campaigns, you could buy ads on 3 stations and talk to almost everybody. And now it's just going to become more bifurcated, if I use that word right. I don't know what big words are. Sometimes I like to use them, though. But it's over so many different channels, right? So how do you actually reach everybody? people spend, including my wife, a lot of time scrolling on TikTok, scrolling on Instagram, which is where I like to go. My family and some of them still on Facebook, and I'm on there every now and then because it's for old folks. But it's more than just figuring out quote unquote social media. It's also more than just figuring out like these podcasts. It's like, how are we ever going to wrangle getting messaging a Greg Casar to all of those people when it's over so many different platforms, some of which don't take advertising? You can't buy political advertising on Spotify. Like, it's just one example because I make and produce and buy ads for a living. But it's got to be an all of the above approach. And that's why Donald Trump is so popular. And I say that with a grain of salt. It's not that he's popular. It's that people know him and his brand. It's just like the Bernie brand. People know Bernie. It's like the AOC brand. Just because you are running for Congress in Des Moines, Iowa, and you're right on all the issues, nobody knows who you are. You can write all and do all the Facebook and be on all the little podcasts that you want. But unless you can break out and have quote unquote a viral moment or do something to get noticed where folks start passing that around, which takes time and money. That's what people really don't want to talk about, is all of the time and money that it takes that really keeps regular folks out of doing any of this.
I've just had a recent experience with this. A guy whose 401k has been devastated by these tariff policies and economic policies, still managing to find a way to defend Donald Trump, claim that he's playing 4D chess, claiming that this is temporary pain. And these are folks who know finance. They get it. And I think a lot of people really, really believe, even though things are falling apart around us, that it's part of some grand plan that Donald Trump has. You see a lot of folks, otherwise smart folks, who will defend the indefensible, who can live with the cognitive dissonance, folks who are living in complete opposition with themselves and their core beliefs. And I feel like a lot of that is there's just disinformation, there's propaganda out there, folks have been manipulated, and there used to be a time in American politics where if a major candidate for office told a bold-faced lie, it was disqualifying. People on both sides of the aisle said, we don't want that kind of person in our politics. Enter Donald Trump, who I don't know ever tells the truth, and when he does, it's on accident. And people believe it, and it's being validated in our politics. How do we square that circle? How do we beat disinformation?
It's a hard question. It's easy to say we have to have what's been said around progressive or democratic spaces. We need to create our own echo chamber. We need our own Fox News. We need our own Joe Rogan, one of these cop-outs. And do we need more information flowing to people? Sure. Do we need things checked? You have no idea how much more disinformation there is out there in Spanish because nobody checks the Spanish. So it's even worse in my community.
Wow.
The other piece is that as you think about that voter who we've lost, like the dude you talk about, it makes me think about the 10 million Democrats who didn't show up, who voted in 2020 in this last election because they weren't motivated to vote for Joe Biden and they thought that Donald Trump was crazy. So they just stayed home because we weren't motivating them or giving them a reason to vote. Think about this, Stacey. Every election that Democrats have won, when we've had this giant groundswell in the last 10 years where we've overperformed, if not been because some great grandiose idea of Democrats, it's been because Donald Trump sucked or that people were pissed at Donald Trump. We have won election cycle after election cycle after a Donald Trump election by saying we're not Donald Trump. And that's not going to get us to the promised land. It'll help get us to the gates probably. We'll win some elections, but are we going to be happy just not being Donald Trump and winning the House back by 5 seats? Or saying we're not Donald Trump and we have a new vision for America rooted in family and American workers that could get us 25 Democratic seats? That's where the future is. That's where we need to be headed. And that stops a lot of disinformation when you're out fighting back against somebody like Donald Trump. Donald Trump will go away. There'll be a post-Donald Trump phenomenon, but his ideological craziness will live on and people will fight over that. And I think we take advantage of that as a progressive or democratic movement, wherever you are in the ideological values of the party, rooted in work. Even moderates and conservative Democrats believe in work. We may believe differently in the philosophy of how to profit from work, but we all believe in work. So I think that, again, we're spending a lot of time figuring out what's the differences and not what the commonalities are. And we need a lot more of that, but from trusted messengers. Because if just Joe Blow goes out there and says, Democrats are now for workers and Republicans suck, they're going to be like, nah, I don't believe you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to get into something I know our listeners are really curious about. No matter how you feel about these political characters, 2008 Barack Obama was special. It was a special time. And I would say Senator Sanders' last run for president was really, really special. Totally different from how I think people felt generally about a John Kerry, about Hillary Clinton, about Kamala Harris. It was just different. And you not only were a part of one of those really special presidential campaigns, you were a key part. You were designing strategy. Talk to us about your time in the war room.
You should know that it probably some of the most inspiring work and people I've ever been around. Now, it's fair also to say that I hired the first 100 staff, so they were people that I'd already liked. So you take that with a grain of salt. But Bernie is special. He's special good and he's special bad. But he is always who he says he is. And there's nothing fake about him. And I don't think I'd ever met, other than Dick Gephardt, a more sincere, honest broker, good or bad. You get what you get from Bernie, and you get one thing, and that is honesty. And I remember being at his home in Vermont on his back porch, eating ice cream. It sounds like I'm talking about a movie. And we had been in the backyard while we were up there doing this great strategy session about moving some staff around, making some difficult decisions in the campaign. And I don't mean 20 people. I mean like 4 people that ran the campaign, which is him and his wife. And we had been out throwing the baseball, hitting the baseball, him batting. Like a lot of you Bernie people that love him are so jealous right now, but you should know that that's who he is. There's no cameras around. There was nothing saying, let's hit the ball around some. Let's play catch. Let's get out here and stretch our legs a little bit. That's just who he was. And, living in the campaign when he had his heart episode, in Nevada, and me being there and having to help shut the campaign down because we didn't know what the future was. Nobody really knew what and how bad he was. Living through the nights in Iowa after the caucus, walking out on the back porch like I wrote about in my book after we had won every precinct in East Las Vegas, and no other candidate got one single delegate in the Latino precincts. And I remember somebody called me and it made me cry. And I went on the back porch because I didn't want folks to see me cry because I'm a big old tough man. It was a congressman, and he wanted me to know how special what we had just pulled off was. And it brought me to tears. Those are moments you remember at different places on the campaign. I remember bringing my then girlfriend out on the campaign trail with me because it was hard to date in DC because I was running a presidential campaign. So there's pictures on a wall of me and Ebony in Iowa, in South Carolina. I took her to the first Democratic debate in Miami. And so that's part of our relationship now. And these things, to you folks listening, it's these connections you make on the campaigns that stay with you forever, and the staff, right? Bernie raised a lot of money. We made a lot of TV ads. We made a lot of digital ads, but he had a prolific organizing department. He had a prolific distributed organizing department. There were also people that I'll be friends with for the rest of my life, and I was there, like Jeff Weaver, who was at my wedding. Good friends with Faz and everybody there. Tim Tagaris. Like, I'm not just name dropping. I'm just saying that these folks are like family now. When you go to battle with somebody, and Stacey, you've been in your own campaigns, you know what it's like when you know the boys and the girls, like when the shit goes down, you ain't got to turn around and look to see if they're still there because you know they're right there.
I love that. One piece of advice I'll never forget came from a dear friend when I announced my first run for office, was to make a list of 4 or 5 people who know exactly who you are, who, as you said, when things get hard, you turn around, they're going to be there. There's no question about it. And that'll pull you through the hard times. And they were absolutely right to give me that advice. You've just launched a new project designed to raise and distribute funds for justice work. Talk to us about that.
It's a brainstorm of former Congressman Tony Cardenas, who helped build out the Congressional Hispanic Caucus's leadership pack, myself and a group of senior advisors who are really just frustrated that Latinos are moving right, and nobody seems to give a shit to spend money to actually go out and get them back. And before it's too late, I said in the Washington Post article, hell, I'll do it myself with a group of folks who understand this and particularly understand Latino men. So Capellones PAC, it means champions in Spanish, is going to raise money to go out and start talking to Latinos about what Democrats are doing differently than Republicans that are good for working families. That says no matter who the candidate is, as long as it's Democrats. I don't care if they're a conservative Democrat, liberal Democrat, but if they're in a marginal seat, I want to get Latinos back. If you said to me, Stacey, what's the one job of Capellones PAC? I'd say to get Latinos back to voting for Democrats at the same level they did 10 years ago. That is my whole purpose. It's a 2-line sentence, and that's what we're trying to do. Well, how are you going to do that, Chuck? Well, thanks for asking, Stacey. We're going to go out. We're going to raise money to do Spanish and language digital ads. We're going to do mail pieces. We're going to partner, important, with Latino groups on the ground to do canvassing operations, to do, get this, a multi-layered Bernie Sanders type organizing project that includes paid media and paid digital, along with ground organizing and door-to-door canvassing. It's pretty unique, but it shouldn't be if we were trying to actually win these voters back. So that's the reason we started the PAC, and we're excited about it.
I love it. Chuck, we only have a few minutes left with you, and I want to ask you a few questions that, our hope is to ask everyone who comes on this show and create sort of a through line in that way in our podcast episodes. So the first question is this: what's a belief that you hold that most people in politics would disagree with?
What's a belief that that you don't have to go to school to be a success? Most people, there's no way you're supposed to do good in school and go to college and get a big job. That's what you're supposed to do. And I don't think you have to do that to be a success.
What does liberation or a truly just society look like to you, Chuck?
Is more people having access to an American dream. The reason my family came here, the reason lots of people come to this country as immigrants, documented, undocumented, I don't give a shit. They come here because they want money. They want to have a chance to make money, and they want a chance to rescue their family from horrible conditions and horrible things that are happening in other places, because there's no place in the world that even slightly compares to this country. Even while Donald Trump and his stupid ass is the president, we're still the best country, where if you show up on time and you're nice and you work hard, you have an opportunity to do anything that you want. Both of my business partners are immigrants, one from El Salvador, one from Mexico. They've lived their truths. They proved to me every day. They figured out how to use a system to get through college. They both came as small children. Now they make more money than a U.S. congressman because their hard work paid off. They got to meet some of the right people. Their families have never been involved in politics. This story is old as time. Liberation to me is when more people have an opportunity to do that, when we're making the opportunity gap bigger for them to have more opportunities to do it and not shrinking it like we're doing right now.
What's one moment in your life or career that changed the way you think about power?
Ooh, nobody's ever asked me that. So many things. Look, I get to be on TV every day. I get to speak at fancy universities. I've seen power up close. And there's one thing I've learned about power is that there's lots of people in power that's fell backwards into it. They never had to work like you did, Stacey, or me, or other folks. So what I've learned about power is that it's I don't know the right word. Objectively, it's not as big as it seems. Congress is much smaller than you think it is. Congressmen are dumber than you know, unless you talk to one. They're dumb. A lot of them dumb as a box of rocks. Not all of them. Some of them. Don't over glorify the power to underestimate your own power. And in these consulting firms or party apparatuses, folks have gotten really lazy, again, to do the same thing over and over again because it's easy and it's risk averse. If you want to really succeed in life, you'll do 4 things. One is you'll really work on your personal network, because your personal network, whether you went to college or not, will be with you forever. Your group of friends will always be there. Always massage and grow your network, thanking your friends, be there. Just know that that's your currency as you go older in life. I can say this enough to you. Your network is your power. Your network is your planet. It's everything you need. Second and third is show up on time. It costs nothing to be on time. It also costs nothing not to be an asshole. So if you work hard, show up on time, and not be an asshole, you've got half of the people in Washington already beat, and you have nowhere proximate to power. Again, recapping Chuck Rocha. I never went to college. I have a criminal record. I was a teenage father, and I've got a loud mouth and a chip on my shoulder, and I'll have more money than I'll ever know what to do with, because I've been out here trying to fight the good fight. Like, if I can do that, that's not yay, Chuck. I'm 1 in a bazillion. If you went to community college or a state school and you got a degree and you're working somewhere, like, know that you can do it. I believe you can do it because I did it, and you're way smarter than I'll ever be. And that's what I think people should think about every day.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful sermon. I love it. Is there anything else you want to share with us?
I think there's lots of great organizers out there who think they can never make it in politics because they don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. Just stay hooked up. You're going to be fine. I bitch and complain about white consultants and no Black or Latinos involved. It's my job. It's my job to take the bullets for you, but don't give up. This thing is changing. You heard what I said about the DCCC and House Majority PAC. Slowly and surely it's changing. Don't give up. Start you a firm. Call me. Talk to other senior Black and brown and AAPI folks. There's going to be space for all of us. There's going to be a dramatic change in American politics after 2028. Mark my word, because we're going to have a bitterly fought out primary, and the same 70-year-olds are going to be gone. And it's going to be a time for a new day. Start positioning yourself right now to take power, because we're going to need you.
We appreciate you so much. Come back, talk to us again in the future, and keep doing what you're doing. It's really inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
A big thanks to Chuck for joining us. If you want to learn more about his work and story, it's all in his book, Tío Bernie. And of course, you can check out his PAC, Campeones, which means champions in Spanish, and see what they're up to. And finally, thank you all for listening. Dispatch cannot happen without listeners like you. Please subscribe and follow on Substack or wherever you get your podcasts. It also can't happen without our paid Substack subscribers. They help us keep the bills from stacking up, and they allow us to spend more time building up this new media project. So if you're not a paid subscriber, please consider it. We really do appreciate it. Or if you are, please consider purchasing a subscription as a gift to someone else. I'm your host, Stacy Walker. A big thanks to my editor, Alio Cienfuegos. This could not happen without your help. You can read more of our essays and check out what's happening at our Substack Dispatch Revolution. Good night, and be encouraged.